Either it's like we don't see any possible way, or we see too many possible ways, or we see two and we can't decide. And in the end, it's just do it. Pick one and do it.
Good evening and welcome to the ninth edition of Lean by Nature call. And we are here in this space to talk about sustained improvements in our personal and professional life. And in the last few calls, we have been talking about the lean management principles, on how we can kind of deploy them and kind of manage the improvements in our day-to-day lives. And in the last few calls, uh, we have been now kind of have a shift and talking about the natural cycles of improvement, which Elizabeth has been talking about using her experience of nature connection. So I think before we get started, I think we need some space to settle down in this room, and for that, I'd like to invite you first to put on the chat. Uh, how do you deepen your connection with nature in your daily life? So this is one question I have on my mind, which I'd like everyone to think about. How do we deepen our connection with nature in our day-to-day life? So maybe Elizabeth, if you can just put that on the chat, and we can just start sharing our thoughts. And thank you. How do you deepen our connection with nature in our day-to-day lives? Absolutely. So I'll just take a moment to share what I do to deepen my connection with nature. I think it's the silent time that I spend with myself every day, doing meditation. I think that's the time when I'm most deeply connected with nature, and this silence stays in me, and it helps me to really appreciate. The birds and the trees and the greenery and the sky and the sun and the stars and the moon. So this silence that I feel during meditation helps me to absorb this vastness of nature, and that's what helps me to get connected and kind of get I mean forget all the worries of day-to-day life. So that's my calling um, with nature. So, Elizabeth, you want to share your thoughts on this?
Yes, I'd love to. It's a wonderful question. So I have different routines that I use now and then for nature connection, and one of them, which really helps me to connect to my surroundings, is going outside and watching the weather and the wind direction, because the wind direction is directly connected. Kind of, if there's weather changes, the wind changes. And yeah, so watching that kind of helps me. Oh, okay, what the hell's happening around me? And that kind of helps me be more connected with the nature around me, because it's different everywhere. And so if I'm connected to my direct um, yeah surroundings, then I feel more connected to nature in general.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Absolutely. And we have more participants joining in. So, thank you for those who are joining now. And we are just getting started and trying to just create an environment of sharing in the room. And one of the questions that I would invite you to put on the chat, I think the answers to is how do you deepen your connection with nature in your day-to-day life? And that's what Elizabeth and myself are sharing right now. I spend some time in meditation and silence to deepen my connection, and Elizabeth goes out watching the weather and the wind direction. So if you can just put on the chat, um, those who are joining now, what do you do to deepen your connection with nature in your day-to-day life? We are here in a space called Lean by Nature for those who are joining for the first time. And we talk about how to sustain improvements in our lives during these calls. This is the ninth call in the series. We have been talking about lean management practices and drawing inspiration from lean management principles in our day to day lives. And in the last few calls, we have been talking about the natural cycles of improvement. And that's why we are more now in tune with nature. What do we do to deepen our connection with nature? So I'd invite you to just put on the chat, take a moment and put on the chat, what do you do to deepen your connection with nature? So, and thanks Elizabeth for sharing the your perspective, watching the weather, wind direction, it always changes, tells you where it's going. So that's interesting. And while you're thinking on that, I'd also like to invite you to think about another question which I have on my mind regarding this space. Is how do you sustain improvements in your life? We always try to become better at what we are doing. So here's the second question that I would like you to think about and possibly put your answer on the chat. And the question is, how do you sustain improvement in your day-to-day life? And whatever endeavor you want to improve, it could be personal life, professional life. We all want to improve. Sometimes we get stuck. So what do we do to really sustain improvement? So I like you to reflect on this question as well while you come to the call. And as you're thinking about it, I'd like to share my perspective around that, really. And that's an experience that I've been enjoying for the last few months, trying to sustain improvements in my life. I think some of the learnings are to have a daily rigor in the area in which the improvement is required. That's one learning that I have kind of imbibed in my life. If we want to really have a sustained improvement, we must keep a track of it almost on a daily basis, and that's helping me to sustain improvements. And and tracking progress is another aspect that I've been doing to sustain improvement. Tracking regular progress, looking at the data. Uh, and a couple of other points that resonate with me on this is getting to the source of information. Trying to get authentic information regarding the area of improvement. That's another thing that has helped me to sustain, not getting biased by thoughts that come from here and there. So that's another thing that I've been doing, enjoying what I do. So customizing the improvement the way I want to do it, and and overcome resistance to the change. I think these are some of the things that are resonating with me as I try to sustain improvements in my life. So I like to invite those who are joining to put on the chat. And Elizabeth, if you have any thoughts on that, I like welcome you to share, please.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think the whole tracking your improvement is a big thing that I'm learning more and more of how helpful that is. For me, the biggest thing to sustain an improvement is to adapt my environment. So I think I shared it in one or two of the previous calls. It's like if I change my environment in a way that I need to sustain that change, keep that change going, then it's a lot easier. Then I don't have to put so much effort into actually doing it because my environment forces me to kind of. For example, I don't know if I um, want to do more physical exercise, I will, I don't know, give away my car or give away my card for public transport so I have to bike everywhere or run everywhere or whatever. Or just kind of have some place to be every day that I need to walk or run towards. Then that that whole change is easier because I have my environment that I have changed in a way that it's supporting me to actually do it. That's kind of my biggest thing.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing. That's really insightful. So I think, and as the participants are joining, I'd like to just welcome them to put on the chat whatever resonates with them on these two questions as we move ahead in the call. And probably it's a good time to hand it now to Elizabeth, who's going to share her nature experience and the natural cycles of improvement that we have been talking about the last call. We talk about observe and envision phases, and I guess we're going to get a lot of new learnings from Elizabeth on how to look at the natural cycles of improvement. So Elizabeth, I'd like to hand it over to you, and please take it forward from here.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to do a little recap as well. I have an overview of like how the natural cycle could look like. And here you see the different phases that I kind of derived from another system that was developed by the H. Shields Institute, and I kind of took that over. And you see, like, there's 8 different steps that are along a natural cycle of the day or the year or the month, and also it's related to the 8 directions. That's like the east, southeast, south, and so on. And here you see it's kind of, even though it's a cycle, it's kind of starting, or the easiest is to start with the observing phase, the observing and then envisioning that we talked about last call. It's a lot about kind of seeing, okay, where the hell am I? What's happening around me? And not doing anything yet, just kind of taking in what's going on around me. And then the envision phase is like dreaming about what could be, what would make it even more great. How can we improve that thing, and how would that look like? And that's continued by the connection phase and the adapt phase that we're going to talk about this time, that I'm going to go more into, and followed by the strengthen, share, integrate, and mentor phase, which we're going to cover the next 2 calls. So just like a short overview of the whole cycle that we will talk about. And so I'm gonna stop the sharing because otherwise I'm gonna be really small. And yeah, so the connection phase. We've been observing what's going on around us. We've envisioned what we want to change, maybe really went into how it feels when we changed, for example, what we're going to do each day that's different, who we're going to surround ourselves with, in what area or location are we at, how do we feel, and stuff like that. And so we have a clear vision of how the final destination, so to speak, looks like, what we want to achieve. And now we need to really connect to that, build up a relationship. So it's about, okay, we're here now. We need to find a good way to actually get to that vision. So one thing that I need to share that story right away, because it's very present for me at the moment, because I just spent 2 weeks in the wilderness in Sweden, where we were tracking wolves for the whole time in very deep snow. And yeah, every day we were moving forward, and I had a big backpack on and skis because the snow was so deep. And even though I did prepare a little physically, it was just a lot of change that needed to happen for me to actually be physically able to move every day and go on. And because we were nomadic, so we had everything in our backpacks, and there is no coming back or no shortcut or anything. And I was kind of the slowest at some point, and it wasn't enough to just um, observe, yeah, I'm the slowest. I needed to really connect with it and embrace it. Ah, okay, yeah, I'm the slowest now, and I can change that. And how does it feel to be the slowest in the group, and that everybody waits for me? And um, how can I not have the urge to I don't know, change it right this second, or because I couldn't. It's like the muscles don't grow from 1 second to the next. Because I needed to really connect to that and build a relationship with. Ah, okay, I'm the slowest. How does that feel? How can I make the best of it? And so every day, every minute, actually, I connected with that, and realized, ah, okay, so how can I actually play with that a little, that I'm still going to find other ways to contribute to the group and feel good about myself, so that I can strengthen along the way, and kind of find other ways around connecting to that first connect as a first step, and then yeah, improve every day. And different also experiences I had in another wilderness experience was that we had only sources like a lake or a stream to drink from, and we didn't have any bottles with us. So it was important to always keep in mind that we need water. And I started to really build a relationship with that water source, that it wasn't like, oh my God, I couldn't bring it with me and it's just a hassle, and that's, yeah, I don't want that. But to really build a relationship with the lake that I got the water from, and um, actually embrace it, that it's something that I valued. In the end, I really valued every time I needed to go for 10 minutes to actually drink something, um, because it was precious time that I had for myself, that I could really be present with it, and see the value of being present with that every moment. So I think a lot of times in other improvement processes, or in any kind of corporate setting, we just kind of see, okay, that's our goal, that's what we're going to do, and we're not really connecting to that stage that we're at, and how it feels, and how we can improve that just a little bit, so that we actually have the energy and the capacity to do something about it, while at the same time it's also a little, maybe a little um, spiritual maybe, or something. It's like, if we don't want a certain thing, and it's like, oh my God, I don't want to, I don't know, not be sporty, and I hate that I'm, yeah, not the fastest, then all the energy goes into, I don't want that. And if we can connect to it and say, ah, okay, yeah, that's the way it is, then we don't need to put all that energy into saying, I don't want that, but we can actually go into, ah, okay, that's what we need to do to change. Um, And yeah, I'm sorry, I just got distracted by the background. So that's just a really, really important process. And the connection also means really looking at, okay, that's the like the first step, and who do we need for that, and when and how and who is actually part of that whole change. So it's getting the team ready, so to speak, and getting the resources ready, and um, seeing, okay, yeah, who, how can we do it? Because if as soon as we know, okay, those are the people on the team, then we can continue with that and plan for that before we actually get into the act phase, action or adapt phase. Because as long as we don't know who's actually in or not, it doesn't really make sense to plan anything. And what I realized as well around that is that whoever actually steps up to the project and wants to be part of it, those are the people who are part of it. And that means both physically and emotionally. Because, for example, if there's in a company, there's a team and it's just the set of team, okay, yeah, you're all doing it. But if someone doesn't really step up to be part of that team, it's a big problem, because then you're kind of, okay, well, is he in or is he out? Do we have to carry like his part of or her part of the whole thing? How much are they involved? It's just a big mess, basically. And if there's someone stepping up who might not want in the team, but they're actually participating, they're contributing, then it might be really, really important to have that person in the team. It might be someone who's asking really uncomfortable questions, or you might feel like they're holding back the whole thing because they're like, okay, but have you done this or this or this or this? And he might be a really annoying person, but he's involved, or she. They're like, they are part of the team, even if they're not like in an organizational structure, might not be part of the team, but they are as soon as they're involved somehow. And it's important to embrace all of that and take that also, because the diversity comes in here, and and really looking at different perspectives, bringing all of that in, is just so valuable. So for example, in my wilderness experiences, I had it so many times. It's like, okay, there's a group of people who decided to be here. You might not like them, you might not be super comfortable with them, but they're all here, and they all stepped up to do that. So they're a valued part of the team. At the same time, if they came here and then at some point decide, okay, I don't really like that, I just kind of be present but not really engage in anything, then it's a big problem, because then you have someone who's not really in or out, or how do you do that? And so yeah, that just brings a lot of value or devaluing into that. But that's also, I think, big part of the connection phase, to actually figure out, okay, who's in, who's out, how, who can we count on, and how can we do that actually to do it, go into the next few steps. Yeah, it's really about getting into the details and ready, and looking at the next few steps. And then we slip right into the adapt or act phase, because that's where we really implement the whole thing. It's where we get going and do something, change some settings for, or some process in the corporate world, change some routines in our private lives, and yeah, kind of just do it. And a lot of times it's a big question of, okay, yeah, we have a plan, we have a vision, we have the people, uh, but we don't really know how to do it. So we're here now, we connected to it. It's like the story that I shared before. I'm the slowest. I know kind of the thing around it. I embraced it. I'm fine with it. But how do I change it? What can I do differently that it can actually work? How can I, yeah, have additional training or rest more or just be happier or involve myself in other ways? Like there are so many different ways of how we can change, um, that that we need to figure out. Okay, well, what do we actually do? Either it's like we don't see any possible way, or we see too many possible ways, or we see two and we can't decide. And in the end, it's just do it. Pick one and do it. And so it's that whole like indecision conundrum thing that so many people nowadays, I think, and I've fallen into that trap so many times. And in that one experience, the longer wilderness experience that I did 1.5 years ago, almost now, it was a running gag, kind of, where we constantly just do it. But how do we do this or this and this? This is frozen, and there was moss that we needed to insulate a building, but it's frozen. How do we do it? Just do it. And so we needed to figure out different ways of, okay, well, what else could we use as insulation? Okay, we can use this, and let's go there. And it doesn't really matter. There is no right or wrong, especially with things where it's not a clear cut thing. We just need to figure out some way, because there's a different right way for each person, each group, in any situation, that you need to figure out for yourself. So you just pick one and go with it, and then see how it works and adapt along the way, um, and just find some way to do it. And in that process, it's also really important to redefine what's normal, because we might have a certain idea of, that's how you do it, that's the game plan, that's the structure, that's how it's always been done, that's the only way I can do it, that's kind of the only knowledge that we have, that's the only resources we have. And that's all kind of very limiting in a way. And so if we really go out of that idea of normal, and question almost anything, then we might actually be able to find different solutions, more innovative solutions, find something that works a lot faster, or more with less energy or whatever, if we constantly ask ourselves, okay, how could I do that differently? Is that like, okay, do we have to do it like this? And so going through that process constantly is a very helpful thing. So yeah, in our experience, I will go in there that again, because it's just really nice metaphor, so to speak, because we needed to build a wigwam, which is basically just a very primitive building. And there were certain ideas around, okay, that's how you do it, that's what the materials you use and everything. And I already shared, like, okay, we needed the moss to insulate. We just, okay, yeah, we need something else. And then we didn't have enough other resources. Okay, that's how you normally do it, but we'll just do it this way, and it's gonna be fine. And we cover this with this, and it was just the whole thing was a big experiment, and it worked somehow. And if it were needed to house more people or be warmer or whatever, then along the way would have improved more. Um, but that's kind of the whole process of, okay, seeing, okay, is that enough? Let's check that out, and then if that's enough, then we don't need to go into it further, and doesn't need to be perfect, just needs to work for our um, yeah, requirements, so to speak. So yeah, that's very short introduction to those two phases. And yeah, I would love to hear maybe if you, Aman, have some reflections, or maybe also our participants, if there's any questions or any reflections, just share it in the chat. And Aman, you can share it, of course, um, with me right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Elizabeth. Excellent. I think that's a great insight to the next two steps. And of course, welcome the participants to put on the chat whatever resonates with them regarding what Elizabeth just talked about, the improvement phases, and if they have any questions. In the meantime, while Elizabeth, you were talking, I did take a few notes in terms of what resonated in me. So when you talked about the connect phase, which is being in the moment, that's very spiritual, because I think that's the end objective of all the meditations that we always hear about. That we have to be here and now. We have to be more present in the moment. So when you said it's about connecting with the reality, and that's what I could get. Whatever situation we are in, we have to just feel that, not get away, not hide, not escape, not kind of shut our eyes to the reality, but face the reality and just try to live through it. And what resonated in me is couple of management principles that are in line with this connection. One is called management by walking around. Management by walking around, and that's a very simple uh, phrase that is used to encourage the managers to be on the floor or the place where the work is happening, and just observe what is happening, what is happening, what's going well, what can be improved. So on the spot, as you are at the workplace, as the machines are operating, as the people are working, you'll see some improvement, improvements that could happen, something that can be improved, and that's where the suggestions will come from. So that's definitely very closely connected to the connect phase that you talked about. And the second thing that resonates with me again is a management kind of framework that's called Gemba. And that's again a Japanese term that one relates to in a manufacturing setup. When the Japanese use the word Gemba, they really say that go to the workplace. Gemba is the workplace. So what they encourage is that don't take decisions sitting on your desk. Go to the place where the things are happening. Observe the error or any rejection or any defect that is happening, and then take the decision. So this is again observing the reality. I think that's beautifully resonated in these two management initiatives. And if you look at Elizabeth, the process improvement framework that I shared earlier, when you talk about the measure phase, I think this also closely relates to the connect. When you talk about measure, you say where are we right now? Before you do the improvement, we must also first assess where are we right now, or what stage are we. We collect some data on the current situation. So to me, that is also a way of connecting to the reality, connecting to the current situation, get some data, get some facts about the current situation, and that is going to help us to move to the next level. And when you talk about the measure phase, the next phase is analyze. So then you analyze the whole current scenario, what we can do, what's going wrong. And last time I shared about 5 W's and 1 H. That's again a tool used. So what is the problem, where the problem occurred, who was the person who was there when the problem occurred, when did the problem occur, where the problem occurred, and how can we resolve it. So these 6 questions are also very pertinent to the incident, the place where the problem is happening. So I would say that the measure and the analyze phase in the process improvement framework ties in very beautifully to the connect phase that you talked about. That's something that I could relate to. And when you talked about the act and adapt phase, that is what comes next. When you measure, when you analyze, and then you improve. And that improve is phase is actually very closely tied to the act and adapt phase, when you really do those small improvements. And what the best thing that I liked when you mentioned is that don't go for 100% perfection initially. Just go with the improvement, whatever resonates, and then things will fall. Let it start working, and then we can further improve those aspects. So those are some of the thoughts that resonated. So yes, of course, I'll welcome those who are on the call to put in what resonates in them regarding what Elizabeth shared regarding the natural process improvement cycles, the connect and the act adapt phase, and if you have any questions around that. We have almost 3 minutes of the scheduled call remaining, and then of course a few extra minutes if there are some things that we want to talk about.
Yeah, and I can also share a little like outlook on what we're gonna talk about next time. Yeah, thanks for your comment here. That's really insightful. Yeah, I hope that it helps in some way. And yeah, next time we're gonna talk about the strengthen and share steps, which is really also a big part of the whole process, because otherwise if we're just changing something but we don't like make it sustainable and have it long term, then the whole change is basically yeah, useless. So the whole strengthen and sharing also, which is basically giving it to the next generation, sharing it with others, and teaching it, is what we're going to talk next time. And yeah, so if you want to get information about that, it's going to be in I think 3 weeks. We said we're going to do the next call because of some time changes, which is going to be the, I think, 11th of March, if I remember correctly. Aman, please tell me
Yeah,
if I'm wrong. So it's the 11th of March that we're going to talk next time, the same time.
yes.
And if you want to be reminded via email, you can sign up to our email list, and I'm going to put the link to the email list also in the chat. And yeah, on our website you'll find all the other information about our previous calls. That's also on YouTube. And yeah, please leave a comment, connect if there's any more questions or any feedback that you might have. We'd love to go into that as well. So yeah, I think when there are no more questions, we can wrap it up. Anything more to add to that, Aman?
No, I think we're good. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing insights. And I know you're fresh from your wilderness trip, and it's always great to spend the time. And I know last time you talked about the temp like minus 28 degrees Celsius is the temperature that you spent time, and that's really kind of something that we can just imagine sitting here in India. So that is really great, and hope we'll have a lot of more insights from you in the next call. on your wilderness journey as well as the natural cycles of improvement. So thank you so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you as well.